Hello and welcome to Boardgame TV. Hope you're enjoying your October. So for this last little week of October, I finally got it. I finally got the game I've been wanting for this month. I've been wanting this game for a long time, even before it ever came out, even before it was ever thought of, and that is called Horrified, and it features the Universal Classic Monsters. Now, for this last week, what we're going to do starting tomorrow for the next 6 days, we're going to go against each monster one at a time. It's going to be a little bit of a variation of the rules, but this is you can do it solo. It's 1 to 5 players. You're supposed to play against at least 2 monsters though if you play solo. However, we're going to play against 1 monster, maybe do a little rules variation to make it just a little bit more balanced. But I want to showcase each monster singularly and go over the rules and how to play against them and see just how each one plays differently. I've always loved the Universal Classical Monsters, except for a brief period of time when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I thought black and white movies, those old black and white monster movies, were lame. I, grew up in the era of Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween and The Exorcist. And no cussing, no real violence, no blood hardly, and over exaggerated dialogue and just the black and white cheesiness. I never cared for them. But then as I got a little bit older, I started watching a lot of the old creature feature monster movies. They had this back when I was still, a teenager. And of course AMC and stuff like that. And I began to appreciate them. And I really fell in love with them during my teenage years and have always loved the Universal Classic Monsters. Now, when I got into board gaming, I was like, man, where the hell is the Universal Classic Monsters board game? It's ripe for it. Come on. And finally, many years after I got into board gaming, somebody had the common sense to get a license from Universal, which it was Ravensburger that's done it, and put out a board game on the Universal Monsters. And it's actually a really good board game. It's simplistic. We're not going to lie on that, but it's actually pretty good. And you could tell that a lot of time and effort went into it, and that the love for the monsters themselves, the love for this license has gone into this game. Now, if you were like me and say, these monsters are lame, I think you might want to rethink that or give it another chance. Now, I highly recommend on Blu-ray, we have the Universal Classics Monsters The Essential Collection. And it basically has the, Dracula, the Mummy, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, the Invisible Man, the Creature of the Black Lagoon, the Wolfman, and the Phantom of the Opera. The Claude Rains colored version. The picture looks fantastic. I mean, some of these movies are pushing almost 90 years old. And the transfer, I think they did a bang-up job. The picture is almost crystal clear. The sound is really good for what it is. And there's plenty of extras on each disc. Each disc has each movie. And it comes with a book inside of it. And I'll show you the book here, how it works. We have our monsters here, and every single one comes with bonus features. I mean, there's tons of documentary type stuff, but this is the horror book. It's a nice little book. I think you can still get this pretty good online at a decent price. I remember when it first came out, it was really expensive. Universal was being real pricks about their licenses, but I think they've kind of relented a little bit. Now, although that has each original movie, there is another thing for connoisseurs of the Universal Classic Monsters. a few years before that DVD release came out, each main monster in the Universal Classic Monsters line came out with a Legacy Collection DVD, not Blu-ray, DVD set. And it is fairly good. And I'm going to go and we're going to switch here. And uh-oh, there's my Dracula. I told you I love the Universal Monsters. I have a Dracula figure. And he comes with a wolf. And this is the Dracula Legacy Collection. And it comes with a bunch of special features, okay? But it also comes with several movies. It comes with Dracula. Now, when we talk about Dracula, think Bela Lugosi. Now, the 1931 version of Dracula is not my favorite Dracula film. Actually, there are a couple in the Hammer collection with Christopher Lee's Dracula I like better. But my favorite is the Bram Stoker's Dracula from the early 90s with Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder and Gary Oldman. That is my favorite Dracula movie. I think it's pretty good. But for 1931, this movie is actually pretty good. And Bela Lugosi is Dracula. I mean, he plays the best version of Dracula. Although it may not be my favorite movie, he is the best Dracula in my opinion. There was just something he brought to the role. I don't know why he never really reprised his role again, officially, except for maybe, the Abbott and Costello stuff. But the 1931 version of Dracula is actually, pretty decent. It's one of the first talkies in a horror movie form. It doesn't have any music to it. That's really kind of the only thing. And but it's Lugosi's performance that makes the movie. And makes him the best version of Dracula, in my opinion. This also comes with the Spanish version of Dracula. It came out at the same time. It's just during the day when the American people would film Dracula, at nighttime the Spanish crew would come in, use the same sets and everything. They would just have different actors. Technically, the Spanish version of Dracula is actually better. The director did a lot more camera stuff and a few tricks, and it actually is just shot better. However, the actor playing Dracula is nowhere, and I mean nowhere near as good as Bela Lugosi. So that brings the movie down a bit. Then we have 36, Dracula's Daughter. Now, Dracula's Daughter is a direct sequel to Dracula, where the only returning cast member from Dracula, though, is Edward Van Sloan. He plays Van Helsing. He played it in the original Dracula. He's basically been arrested for Dracula's murder, and they don't believe that Dracula was a vampire. Dracula's Daughter, played by, I want to say, Gloria Holden, comes, burns the body, and she's now thinking she's free of the curse, but she kind of goes back into her dark side. It's not as good a movie as Dracula. However, she is very mesmerizing as Dracula's daughter. I mean, she just is. She's the original, in my opinion, goth lady, goth chick. I don't know. But she is fantastic, and she kind of carries the movie as well, but the movie has a real weird tone to it. One minute it's like really dark, and the next minute it's lighthearted with the comic relief between the main hero and his female sidekick. It's worth a watch. Like I said, she is very mesmerizing. It often gets overlooked. Then we have, in Universal took a break from their monster movies in the 30s after they were done, and then they started it back up again in the 40s. And so we have Son of Dracula in 1943. This is where the famous Alucard bit comes in with Dracula's name spelled backwards. It's played by Lon Chaney Jr., the man who plays everything. And it's actually decent. He does a decent job as the son of Dracula. And it's worth a watch as well. And then we have House of Dracula 1945. This is when Universal was knee deep in their Monster Mash type stuff where they would take all their monsters and try to put them all together in one movie. And House of Dracula is really not that good of a movie. I mean, they try to cram the Frankenstein, the Wolfman, Dracula, Hunchback, a mad scientist, all these people in there. I think Dracula is played by John Carradine. He's okay. He's a far cry from Bela Lugosi, and Dracula's kind of treated a far cry from when Lugosi played him. When Lugosi played him, the guy was powerful, had presence. He's kind of like an afterthought in these Monster Mash movies for some weird reason. Really, House of Dracula is just for novelty only. It's not really that great of a movie, but hey, you know, it's okay for what they were trying to do, I guess. So that's Dracula. There's also a Frankenstein series. I'll sit the monster up here that I have. See, I have Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein. And we have, of course, the Legacy Collection from Boris Karloff. Now this includes Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein, Ghost of Frankenstein, and House of Frankenstein. So the first Frankenstein movie is a classic. It's technically, it came right out after Dracula. It's done by James Whale. And where's my bride here? Here we go. We'll put him right here. How about that? There we go. And it's a much better film than Dracula. From the Gothic cemeteries and all that kind of stuff. Of course, it doesn't really stick to the novel, but Dracula didn't stick basically to the novel much either. Who can forget Boris Karloff's portrayal as Frankenstein, one of the classic monster portrayals? I mean, he did a bang-up job. Having to go through all that makeup and not saying anything. And Colin Clive is great as Dr. Frankenstein. A classic done by James Whale, which, like I said, is much better than Dracula. However, the sequel, Bride of Frankenstein, is arguably the first great sequel to ever surpass the original. I think Bride of Frankenstein is a much superior film, and so do a lot of other people. The monster begins to talk, and you can, really see his feelings. James Whale, I think, is better director in this one. The inclusion of the Dr. Pretorius character is so great, and Colin Clive does another good performance. And plus, you get the bride coming in for her little 2 minutes of fame at the end of the movie. I mean, she's such an iconic character, but she only has like maybe 5 minutes at the most screen presence at the end. But a fantastic movie and the first sequel to really ever overpass the original. Then we have Son of Frankenstein in 1939. Now, it's the last time Karloff would play Frankenstein's monster. He's kind of regressed a little bit. He doesn't talk. The movie takes place several years after Bride, and it has one of the sons of Frankenstein coming back to the family castle. I think his name is Wolf Frankenstein. The standout in this is actually Bela Lugosi as Igor, or however you want to pronounce it, the hunchback, who's friends with the monster, and he gets the monster to kill people that he feels slighted him. They tried to kill him one time and hung him, and he survived the hanging, so he's still roaming around. It's that character and that performance that really makes Son of Frankenstein. And also, Son of Frankenstein is actually really good. The more I watch it, the more I like it. It's a longer of the movies, and I think it actually deserves credit with the first two because it rounds out the trilogy really well. It has this nice Art Deco style to it. There's a really great battle of wits between Wolf Frankenstein, Igor, and the inspector who's hunting for the monster, or who's always hated the monster, and you get this three-way little thing between them, and it's fantastic. It's very good. It's a little slow in places, and the little kid actor in there is but I think it's one of the better ones. I actually enjoy it more and more every time I watch it. And I started including watching it because I watch these like every night in October when I go to sleep. I watch the original one of each of these movies coming up: Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, the Mummy, and all them every night when I go to sleep. And I include Son of Frankenstein with that now because I actually like that movie. Then we have Ghost of Frankenstein, 1942. It's kind of basically a sequel to Son of Frankenstein. Igor is still in it, and he and the monster travel on to go see another son of Frankenstein, who's this time's in charge of a, I guess, mental health clinic. It's nowhere near as good as Son. And continuity kind of... Universal will never really be great about their continuity, but the continuity would kind of go down the crapper starting around here. But it's a decent movie. It has a funny performance by Igor. He's not as good as he was in Son of Frankenstein. And the monster is played by, I want to say, Lon Chaney Jr. So he played Dracula. You know he plays the Wolfman. Or he plays Son of Dracula. And now he plays Frankenstein's monster. And he will end up playing the Mummy as well. So, man, the guy plays them all. His performance is okay. It's not a Lugosi. He's not really doing anything but stumbling around and all that kind of stuff. And so, But Ghost of Frankenstein is okay. It's just nowhere near as good as the others. And then House of Frankenstein from 1944, another one of their little monster mashes that includes, Dracula, the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster, the mad scientist, all that kind of stuff. I think some stuntman, Glenn Strange or somebody, played the monster in that one. And it's an all right thing. It's basically, I think it has Boris Karloff in it, but he doesn't play Frankenstein. He plays a mad scientist. He kind of is full circle now. It's okay. It's they obviously kind of went a little downhill, but House of Frankenstein, it's the better of the monster mashes. I'll give it that. So you get a lot of bang for your buck for these. Next, we're moving on to The Mummy. Turn that down. There we go. Ah, yes. Boris Karloff's other iconic performance, The Mummy. So, The Mummy is very much like Dracula. It was made, I think, a year later. Let's see here. Well, it was made by, I think, almost a year later after Dracula, or around the same time, and it has Edward Van Sloan in it playing the like a professor type guy. It's basically the same thing. The mummy falls in love with the lady, but it's still Boris Karloff's greatest, one of his greatest roles. That makeup they did for back then in 32 or 33, whenever this was made, is fine, is great. Yuta Zohan, the heroine of this movie, is actually, I like her a lot more than a lot of the other female leads in these movies. Her and Evelyn Anklers, I think, would be kind of my favorites. And what can you say? It's a great slow-paced movie, but it's not long. It's only about an hour, but it's like that. However, when the Universal started their Monster Mash stuff up again in 1940, they made several sequels. And you had The Mummy's Hand, The Mummy's Tomb, The Mummy's Ghost, and The Mummy's Curse. Now, they would feature a different mummy. His name would be Karis. And he would be played by different actors. I think a stuntman played him one. I know Lon Chaney Jr. played him one time, or maybe more. And it basically, The Mummy's Hand is basically some adventurers go find a pyramid. You know, it takes place like in the 20s. Run afoul of the people there. The mummy is kind of brought to life by these Tannalees, and there's this big adventure. And then in the end they win, but 2 years later, the people that survive that one are kind of like old there, and the mummy is sent after him. And it's all kind of like sequels to each other. They kind of all leave where the other one left off, but they introduce new characters and stuff like that. This is where your typical mummy lumbering around, strangling people comes from. It's from these movies right here. Though how he catches people, I'll never know, because it shows him running, and then here's the mummy lumbering around, chasing after him. They're okay. I think the Mummy's Hand and the Mummy's Tomb are like the better ones. But you know, why they chose to do, I guess because they couldn't get Karloff, or they just wanted to go in a different direction. Who knows? But they are fun movies. They're the fun ones you watch, the creature feature type. You just stick in and just watch a mummy lumber around and chase people. Fantastic. And again, a great deal and plenty of extras for one of our favorites, The Mummy. And then we have The Invisible Man. Again, directed by James Whale, featuring Claude Rains as the Invisible Man. More of a science fiction than horror, I think. But still a classic monster movie. I mean, Claude Rains is fantastic as the Invisible Man. I mean, utterly fantastic. You can tell that the man was a good man once, and he's going crazy, and he just turns utterly freaking evil, man. And his portrayal is fantastic. And the effects for the time are fantastic. I mean, the way they got to, now, they did the things. Now, this being on Blu-ray or cleaned up on DVD, you can see a lot of the wire stuff and the effects, but man, for the time, I bet this has freaked people out. They were going, how the hell did they do that? And it still looks, some of it looks actually still pretty good today. No CG. I didn't even know what the hell that was. So this includes, of course, the Invisible Man. But again, when they started up their Monster Mash in the 40s, revitalizing these monsters, it includes The Invisible Man Returns. It is a loose sequel to The Invisible Man. Vincent Price is the Invisible Man this time. He's basically kind of been framed for a wrongdoing, and I think it's the science. He's friends with the scientist, and the scientist is Claude Rains' brother or relative from the first Invisible Man movie, and he injects him with it so he can clear his name, but he's starting to go crazy too. So Vincent Price actually does a pretty good job of him, and Vincent Price will replay the Invisible Man role in one of the Abbott and Costello movies. So some people actually may consider Vincent Price the Invisible Man, but I always still consider Claude Rains. Although, you know, I love Vincent Price. He's one of my favorite old-time actors, so, you know, there you go. Then you have The Invisible Woman, came out basically the same year. This has nothing to do with it, the other Invisible Man stuff. A scientist turns this lady invisible by a totally different mean. It used to be with the injection in the other two. This time he uses a machine, and it's a comedy. It's basically a comedy spoof, and that's what it is. You know, it's fun to watch at least once. Then you have The Invisible Agent, which is 1942, a kind of like war propaganda thing where we send one of our agents who they use in the serum from the original Invisible Man movies, turn this guy, and he goes and beats Nazis and all that kind of stuff, and that's what it is. It's a kind of war picture type thing. And then they have The Invisible Man's Revenge in 1944, and that kind of goes more back to the horror type thing with the Invisible Man kind of turning bad again. Of all the series, it's kind of the most weirded because you have a comedy, horror, sci-fi, and war type of pictures all in this collection. So it is your most diverse and most interesting collection, honestly. So yeah, it's pretty good. I watched every one of them. They're all watchable. Invisible Woman's kind of like but I mean, you watch it one time to see how it is. Then we have the Wolfman, Lon Chaney Jr. He would be the only Universal monster, or he would be the only actor to play a Universal monster over and over again. While Lugosi would play Frankenstein 3 times, Chaney would play him several times. And, Karloff would play Frankenstein 3 times. Chaney would play the Wolfman. He was like a studio actor. You know, Universal had him on lock and key. And here, you're going to do this picture, and then you're going to do this one, and you're going to do this one. And so there it is. So, he's fantastic. The makeup gets better over time, and the transformation scenes get better over time. This was not one of the original 30s Universal monsters. This was created in the 40s. They came up with a new idea, and it's kind of what kicked off their second era of monster movies. You know, you had that run in the 30s, and then it kind of stopped for a little bit, and then in the 40s, they kind of started it back, and the Wolfman is the one that really kind of propelled it. This one has Werewolf of London, which was a 1935, one of their little horror movies. It's okay. It's much different. It's slower. It's a different take on a werewolf tale. But it's not bad. It's creepy in its own right. It's just, to me, it's not as good as the Wolfman. You have Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, which is another one of their Monster Mash ones. It's kind of, Frankenstein, Wolfman, Dracula type thing. And it's probably the best of the Monster Mash movies. That's what I would say about that. You get a cool little fight at the end between the Wolfman and Frankenstein. And, one's strong, but he's slow. The Wolfman is fast and quick, but he's not as strong. So, and then you have She-Wolf of London, which I recommend you watch it once, but then that's it. It's kind of, I don't know how to do it without kind of spoiling it. It's more of a psychological thriller type. You're not going to have an outright monster roaming around like you did in the Wolfman movies, messing people up, okay? They didn't put it like that. But the original Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr., Claude Rains as his father, Evelyn Ankers, one of my favorite actresses from that time. It's a really good movie. It has a Bela Lugosi as the original werewolf, Bela. It's really good. It's, I don't know, what more to say about it. It has that feel to it. It has that gothic with the s'mores and the fog and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty good. Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is a direct sequel to it. So it tells you, if you ever want to know what happened to Lon Chaney Jr., his character after the original Wolfman, then Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is a direct sequel to it. So, and it's actually, like I said, pretty decent. Then we have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Now, not a Universal monster per se. It was originally, it's a Robert Louis Stevenson story. And originally, the movie Dr. Jekyll Mr. Hyde, the 1932 version with Frederick March, it was a Paramount release. However, later on, at least I think last time I checked, Universal bought the rights to it. So technically, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is now a Universal monster. I know he was in the Mummy movie with Tom Cruise. I think Russell Crowe played him. So we'll see what happens with them. I mean, that was the latest and that was a Universal movie, and that was, you know, so they have the rights to him. So I got this little double feature here. So I've always considered him a Universal classic monster, even though technically he wasn't part of it. But it has the 1932 version and 1941 version. The 1941 version with Spencer Tracy is it's okay. All right, it's okay. However, the 1932 version with Frederick March is the iconic one. First of all, Frederick March is freaking fantastic. The guy as Dr. Jekyll is pretty damn good. But then when he becomes Mr. Hyde, man, he's fantastic. Mr. Hyde is the ultimate asshole. I just put it like that. He does what he wants, to whom he wants, when he wants, how he wants. Man just don't care. Pure evil, I think that's what pure evil is. Just throw away all inhibitions, just do whatever the hell you want at any time. So I'm waiting for a good Blu-ray of this, man. 1932 is fantastic. And Frederick March was a Academy Award winner. So I can't remember. I don't know if I think he won an award for this, which he should have. If he didn't win an award for his portrayal, that's a crime, man, because this is fantastic. And I highly recommend, if you're into the Universal monsters and like that stuff, you watch Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and consider it part of the Universal Monsters family. Hey, and horrified people, you know, if you want to make an expansion, feel free to put him in it, please. He belongs in there. I would love to see an expansion with him in it. Then we have the Phantom of the Opera, the 1943 version, starring Claude Rains as the Phantom. Now, of course, many people consider the Lon Chaney 1920s version of Phantom of the Opera the main classic, the main staple of the series. And I can't disagree with them. That movie, though, has no sound. And it's not really considered part of the Universal Classical Monsters Classic Monster Collection part of the Universal Classic Monsters for whatever reason. I guess because, like I said, it has no sound. However, I actually think that one's a better movie than this one. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Claude Rains does a good job as the Phantom. You get to know him before he becomes the Phantom. And they try to put a little bit of a story to it. But this kind of just plays more like a musical. There's a little bit too much comedy in it between the inspector and the other male opera singer who vying for her affections, Suzanne Foster's affections. And it's a little short on the horror, more on the comedy, focuses more on the comedy, more on the musical. Claude Rains' Phantom doesn't have much of a presence. When he does, though, it's pretty good. That's the part about this movie. When he shows up and he's in it, it's pretty good. It's still not a bad movie. It's in color. It's their first one of this collection to be in color, in Technicolor, I should say. But it has, however, he is considered a Universal Classic Monster. He is pretty menacing and he does a good job. I just wish the movie was a little bit better. And then finally, turning to our final Universal Classic Monster, the creature from the Black Lagoon. As you can see, I got my creature there. And of course, there's our iconic bathing suit. Wow. Alright, so this one has 3 movies. It has Creature from the Black Lagoon, Revenge of the Creature, and The Creature Walks Among Us. Of course, this comes in the 50s, and this is considered the last of the Universal monsters. And yeah, I mean, why not? It's pretty good. The first Creature of the Black Lagoon movie is actually pretty good. It's in 3D. It was in color. And it's a pretty good monster movie. It's a little bit scary. I will give them that. Of course, you can't forget her. She's so iconic. And what a great movie. The Revenge of the Creature is alright. It's a sequel. It doesn't have any of the original cast. It just comes back and does basically the same thing over again. They capture him. He escapes, falls in love with a lady, and there we go. The Creature Walks Among Us is a weird one. It's got him running around in a suit with a jacket. They do some kind of operation on him to make him more human, and it's just, I don't know. I'm just like, what were they thinking? I think, like I said, I think The Creature Walks Among Us is kind of, I don't know. It's just weird looking at it. It's weird going from how it originally started to where it was then. So, I don't know. It's definitely not my favorite. But Revenge of the Creature is okay for a sequel. But of course, the original, the classic one, is the best. And you know, they did some pretty cool stuff with that. I mean, the underwater sequences were really pretty revolutionary for the time, to be honest with you. So, The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Oh, and horrified people, add the Phantom of the Opera as an expansion as well. You can put him in there. You missed him. He's clearly a Universal monster and you didn't put him in there. So that, as you can see, is my take on the Universal Monsters collection. As you can see, I love these monsters. I have all the figures for them. I have all these DVDs and Blu-rays for them. So I honestly wish people would give these movies a chance. If you're already a fan and you love these movies, these DVD sets, you know, for $10, I think some of them are, you get several movies with each set and plenty of documentaries and behind the scenes footage, all kinds of good stuff. You get a real good bang for your buck. On Blu-ray, again, the essential, if you are a Blu-ray connoisseur, this is fantastic. Horrified, it's going to be a great game. And if you never gave these movies a chance because you thought they were a little cheesy or just out of date, give them a rewatch. They're not long. Give some of them a rewatch and, you know, give them another chance. These movies are fantastic. They're part of history and they'll be around a lot more longer than you and I will be. We'll be dead and gone. These movies will still be selling on Blu-ray or whatever the hell format they come out with by then. So that was my take on the Universal Monsters. Hope you enjoyed it. And like I said, this week we're going to be hitting Horrified pretty good. So I hope to see you then. And until then, have fun.